Good morning, and thank you for joining today's webinar from Spec Innovations, What's New in Innoslate 4.2. My name is Elizabeth Steiner, and I'll be the moderator for today's webinar. First, I'd like to go over some housekeeping before we get started. During the presentation, feel free to send us questions, and we will get them answered in the question and answer part of the webinar. You can also interact with us on LinkedIn through the Innoslate user group or through Twitter using the handle @Innoslate. The webinar is being recorded and we will make it available to you after the live presentation, so be sure to keep an eye out for it in your inbox. Now, I would like to introduce you to our presenter, Dr. Steve Dam. He'll be showing you how to use all the new features and updates in Innoslate 4.2. Dr. Dam is the president and founder of Spec Innovations. He has been involved with research, experiments, operations analysis, software development, systems engineering, and training for more than 40 years. Dr. Dam participated in the development of C4ISR Architecture Framework and DoD Architecture Framework. He has also received an Expert Systems Engineering Professional Certification from INCOSE. He currently is applying systems engineering techniques to various DoD, DOE, and commercial projects. Feel free to send Dr. Dam any questions through the LinkedIn Innoslate user group or send him an email if you have any questions after the webinar. And now I will hand over the controls to Dr. Dam and we will get started.
Thanks, Elizabeth. So I'm just going to go through a few slides first, and then we're going to jump right into a full-up demo. So just a little bit about us and who we are. Again, Spec Innovations had created Innoslate to try to meet some of the specific needs that we found in the areas where we've been working for the last 25 years. So particularly the issues we were trying to address was try to deal with, create a more simple, easy to use tool. Particularly, we wanted to make sure the language made sense. So that's why lifecycle modeling language. And of course, collaborative. We never did any work. It seems like everything we do is with many, many people. Accuracy, of course, making sure that the models make sense and using simulation for that purpose, but also the use of natural language processing and machine learning to try to do a better job of understanding things like requirements traceability, modeling heuristics. So again, improving how you do development. Scalability, of course, was another key aspect of what we wanted, and working on large projects, we found we needed to get into the millions of entities. This is just what we've tested it to on the cloud. Behind your own firewalls on bigger servers and things like that, you may find even better performance. And of course, lifecycle management support across the whole lifecycle. That was another thing. You'd find individual tools that would do a really good job in one area, but wouldn't give you that whole gamut of things. And particularly documentation. How do you create documentation? Because that's a key part of what we have to do as systems engineers, whether we like it or not. And interoperability, of course, the ability to move data back and forth between other tools. So again, we look at the whole life cycle. So we do provide a documents view to get you started and do your documentation side of it. That's also often where you end. It also specifically for requirements, we have a specific view for that to let you see the quality score and create the quality side of it, do that analysis as you're trying to do to understand your requirements better. And of course, modeling, we have 24 different diagram types right now and counting. We also have a CAD viewer capability, so you can bring in CAD drawings and decompose them into our physical objects and then trace them back to this. So this is a way, again, to verify that you're starting to get the results you're expecting from the design engineering space. Simulation, of course, can be used even earlier in the life cycle, but that's a key part of then calibrating your simulations to make sure they actually make sense and you're getting good results. And of course, test center to be able to capture your expected results, your actual results, the status, be able to track that, link that all back to the originating requirements that you're satisfying. So that's key for the whole system side of it, but program management is integrally linked to systems engineering. So things like risk analysis is a technical problem, and you need to work on that. Schedule often ends up being needed as part of what you do in system engineering, working with program management. So that's another part that you often do. If you do a systems engineering management plan, timelines are going to be a very key part of that. And so we have a very nice timeline diagram for that capability too. And other things, cost analysis, things like that you can do as well. Of course, what we really wanted to talk about today, though, is all the new stuff. And we're continuing to improve the tool. And this was just a recent point release. And I do have to explain a little bit our release structures. When you see a major number change, that means we've actually done a re-architecting of some kind, framework change of some kind. When we went from 3 to 4, we actually changed frameworks on both the front and the back end. So there's quite a bit of software redevelopment, rewrite with that. So this 0.2 release, we're adding these new features specifically to help you do some things that you want to be able to do. People have been asking for, so we're trying to put these things in there. The first one is charts view. It's a new kind of view. So you have documents, diagrams, database view. Well, we've added charts view now as a new viewpoint. And within that, the first chart is an XY plot, very simple, just a very basic capability, but it's a starting point to let you be able to capture the data that you're trying to get from, particularly from other design engineering tools. Oftentimes that will be the output you're looking for, so you want those charts for that purpose. We've also added the capability to generate a complete system requirements document. This is modeled on the Defense Acquisition University's template for the SRD, and that is going to be generated from the asset diagram. And again, I'm going to show you examples of all these things. One of the enablers actually for that SRD generation and capability to keep it up to date is the ability to add tables and entity notations in the description field now. This is very similar to what we were doing before, when we could add a diagram into a live diagram into a description field. This now you can do it with the textual information within the models as well. Everything except another description. And the reason that is you really can't, you would have the possibility of doing tables within tables. So we want to avoid that conflict and that problem, because you could, the browser can only take so much. So anyway, that's the only limitation you'll see. Then of course, we have now the ability to do roll-ups from the database view, so you can actually roll up numbers. This is a very simple roll-up model right now. We are looking to add to that in the future, and would appreciate any suggestions you have in that area. Also, document templating is something many people asked for, so we have, again, a beginning cut at that. Don't know if we're done yet with that one, but it's something at least get you started to show how to create templates to be able to reuse the templating to create your own within the documents view. There's a support dashboard as well at the organizational level. That's for your organizational administrators. Again, I can show you that just briefly, give you an idea of what that looks like. And then, of course, the entity definition report, which is a important report that was missing, actually, in our transition from 3 to 4. Several people noted it and said, gosh, you really need to have this. So that's in this version too. So again, we have already kicked off 4.3 development. And so again, many of your suggestions have been integral to these releases, and it will continue to be so. So let me go to the actual demo portion of this, and I'm going to escape out of that and make sure. Okay, so let's not look at my calendar. I didn't know I had that up. Okay, so let's just make sure we're live. There we go. Okay, so there's a timeout thing, by the way, on the cloud. That's something we have fixed recently also. It was a bug fix, was you time out and things were not saved. And so now what we do is when you time out, it'll prompt you it'll bring up the sign-in screen, but it'll bring you right back to where you were, so you can then save your efforts. So again, if you were having problems with that on the cloud version, that's been fixed. And hopefully, if those of you who were using Enterprise didn't have that problem at all, because you could set the timeout to not timeout at all. Okay, so let's kind of go through the main things that are new here. Let's start with Charts View. So Charts View is just a new view off the menu. You go select Charts, and you can pin it up at the top like I have done. If you want to create a new chart, you just come over to New Chart. And then, of course, unfortunately, right now, the only one you've got is XY, but more are coming. And then just do your next and say test, something like that. And then it'll give you that. Now, it gives you this basic template output that you would work with. But the idea is that you're going to get data points usually from some other tool or some other place, and oftentimes they're in a CSV form. So we can import those, and let me go get one. And I have it in here. Here we go. And so here's an example of something we can import, just to show you what that looks like. So let's do that. And then now it wants me to go to the next step. See, I can't do apply yet. Apply is faded out, so you can see I have to go to that next step to configure it. So let's look at what that is. So that shows me what the data maps were. And in fact, let me bring up that picture so you can actually see what it is I'm working from the original Excel file. So here's the original Excel file. And what I had was time versus mass. And I was just looking at the numbers, and this was something I just made up to give me the different things I'm looking for. So this is the kind of format. It's looking for the units are also in parentheses at the header. So that's the kind of format, very typical kind of output you might get from some tool like a lab view or something like that kind of output. And so now what this is doing is looking at the different classes of information. So how do I want to store it? And I have two options, characteristics or measures. Okay, so characteristic here, and I'm going to make this my x-axis. So that's all that's doing. And then the second one, I'm saying these are going to be x-axis items. And then I'm going to also put characteristics here, and that's the y. And so by doing that now, what it's going to do in my next step, it's going to show me how these are tied together. So you can see now this looks a lot like what I started with. Now, by the way, the label is right here as to what I want it to be. So it just picked up the names that were in those headers and used those as a starting point for that. So I can adjust that as I want to. And in fact, I'll show you a little bit more a little bit later with that. So here's the diagram. It looks like it's going to come in looking like this. This looks pretty nice. So I'm just going to apply that. And that gives me my simple little plot. Well, now what I want to do, gosh, this isn't exactly what I want because I'd like to get some names of things a little differently. So in fact, if I really want to change the name of this overall thing instead of test, I can put in what I really want this to be, a plot of mass versus time, something like that. But usually you put something a little more interesting up there, and see that changed that value up there for the title. So that's one quick thing you can do. Now what I want to do is change then my other things, my settings. So let's look at that. So I can come in and look at those different settings. And there's different labels for the X and Y axis, also the titles and things like that, so we can play with that a little bit. But let me show you this. So now I want my Y axis is going to be mass, and I want it in kilograms. Okay, and I come down to the y-axis, x-axis, I'm sorry, and do the same thing. This will be time, seconds. Okay, and I can change colors here. I can do a lot of other changes to make the axis look different if you want to do that. But something simple. So again, now you can see I've changed the x and y axis labels, and that's good. I've got this time thing up here, though. I'm still not exactly happy with that particular label for that. So maybe I want to change that as well. So let's view the data set, which is where that label setting is. So we're going to say it stage 1. So if I want to say this is somehow associated with stage 1, I would do that. And then you can see also in here, I can actually edit my parameters. I can add another series if I want to here as well, existing. So that's how I can get multiple series on the same thing. So again, that gives you just quick, easy with that. So again, this is just a quick way to kind of capture information, data points from other things. Now, you're probably wondering, gosh, what am I going to do with all that? Well, what did I actually end up creating? So if I go to database, I'm going to see that I've created these points, these time characteristics, okay, and mass characteristics. And I can then go see the relationships associated with them. And let me get all, so I make sure I see all the things. So this mass 2 is related to time 2 in the characteristic. It specifies the stage 1, which is what I'm looking for. Stage 1 is an asset. And so that's the type of data you're collecting. So this is going to be data associated with something, usually physical, is usually how that works. So you're going to associate it with that system or the subsystem and its performance or whatever you're looking for, which again, why we use characteristics for these values. So that gives you some of that under the hood look at the data points. Now I can do all kinds of other things with that data if I need to or if I want to, in terms of looking at specific data points. I can certainly talk about particular problems that are associated maybe with the data point that I want to look at and say, is that really correct? You know, what are the other margins and things I'm looking at with it? So again, these are just examples of how to use this. Here's some other examples I did earlier. I created a chart here, and this has 3 different lines, and this is looking at the mass over time of the burn of the rocket in this case. And so these are my estimated values. And so if you notice that, you know, this blue one, the stage 1 is a lot of mass, so that's kind of swamping the others, and I'm not seeing them as well. So I can click off that and just get stage 2 and stage 3 and see those together. Now, if I wanted to just see stage 3, I would click off stage 2 there, and I can see its burn. So again, that's the kind of thing. Again, this was just something I made up as an example, but you can see the kind of way you might be able to use this with real data. Another example for charting was looking at it with maybe test data. So maybe you have an estimated value for the stage 1 burn, and then so I got those data points from simulation or however you're doing that modeling, and then you actually run a test and it shows up quite differently. And so that's the kind of thing. And again, I can compare those data sets, view those data sets, and see how they were close to each other. Obviously, the first points are the same, so that's why you see with the other that value that in fact the red and the blue are together. Probably should have colored it purple, but didn't. One overlays on the other, so that is that line. So again, we're not curve fitting, we're not doing any of those things yet. Again, that's something we want to look at in the future, adding that kind of analytics to this, but you got to get the data in first, and that's what we started with. So again, this may not be something you're going to use a lot right now, but over time, you're going to start seeing more and more capabilities with these kind of charts, and of course, other chart types. So that's kind of just quick, in a nutshell, the charting side of this. The next item on our list was the system requirements document itself. So let's go to shift gears and go to documents view. And so in the way this works, actually, let me start actually with diagrams view. It's actually the more correct place to start. So when you have an asset diagram like this is our physical diagram. Now it has all kinds of connections, right, conduits associated with it. There's data that flows over the conduits, perhaps. In some cases there is, some cases there isn't. And so you'll see it transfers pieces of information. So again, the input-output variables are being transferred there. And so what we're looking to do is try to get and by the way, we've also associated with this other things, you know, functionality, things like that. So as we do it. Now, I'm going, if I want to get the SRD for this level, and this is really an architectural level concept diagram. So I can do that by just selecting Generate SRD. I've already done that, but let me just do it again to show you that, in fact, what we're doing now is we're baselining. So before, when we had the capability of generating a requirements document from the functional diagram, from the action diagram, we'd create a new one each time. This time, what we're doing is when we generate this, I can give it a version number. And of course, you want to be consistent about your baselines and your versions. So it's actually generating the baseline. So anything I've updated from the previous version will show up here with the yellow bars because I have previous versions I can look at. Okay, so that's allowing me to seed modifications, work with those modifications as we need to develop the product over time. Now, what it did is automatically, we have a template, again, using the guidance and things like that. By the way, also over here, you'll notice these little lightning bolts. If you hover over that, you'll see it's kind of small print, so you may not be able to see this very well right now, but this says the description field of the master asset goes here. Of course, it disappeared the minute I started talking about it. The asset diagram of the master asset is provided as well. So again, this is trying to tell you what's in this information set that's here. So actually, this text came from that particular asset, which is the high-level concept diagram, and so that's where this is based from. So you see that from the name up here at the title, okay? And then this diagram was the diagram we were just seeing. Well, that's great, but what about all the other information? Well, sure enough, as we scroll down, some of these things are just to be filled in because that's the kind of information. It's not the kind of thing that it'd be normally part of the modeling that you do with it. If there was a states and modes diagram, I'll show you an example of that, it would add that in here. So as we scroll down a little bit more, all of a sudden now we have an interface diagram. So here's our external interfaces. This is showing the physical I/O diagram, which is a very nice diagram because it shows both the interfaces and the data flow come together here. So in fact, if you're not familiar with this diagram, the solid lines show you the data flow, and that means that there's also a conduit that has been associated with it. And then the dashed lines are indicating I have a conduit that I've established, but I haven't put any data flow over it, so there's no IOs. And again, there's other things that that particular diagram will give you indicators for. So I scroll down, this table has been generated from that information above. The two different, the interfaces particularly, which you saw up here, if I scroll back up, and I look at particular interfaces that were here, these conduits. So we can see that the conduits are here. As I scrolled back down, I'll see that command control communications architecture for the systems, the FireSat system. So again, that shows you what that conduit name is. So again, these are those things. And then also I'm building this other table with the actual data flows. So this is showing me where my data flows over the different conduits as well. The interesting thing about this example is it's showing me actually, I haven't done a great job of modeling yet. So I actually need to work on that, on this particular model. So also, if you notice here, the data flows have actual requirements associated with them. So here is the requirement: the wildfires shall generate the emitting IR emissions. Of course, that's pretty straightforward. But so these have attributes, because I have quality checked this, and I can see that it has some problems with it that still need some work. So in fact, and it's even showing there may be a potential duplicate somewhere else. So that's an important thing to know. Yeah, I've got two that look very, very similar, if not identical, and in fact, they are identical. So again, these are things to help you go through and modify what you're doing, how you're doing the work better. But if we scroll on down some more, you'll see other things that will be created for you as you need them as well. And of course, lots of fill-in things for you to create the rest of this document as you want to. So let me see. So this example didn't have a lot, and there's acronyms as well. It'll capture your acronym list. So let me go to another example. It's a level down. So this was created, this system requirements document was created from a lower level diagram, which is, this is the decomposition of that FireSat itself. So the FireSat example there, and again, it shows a little of that descriptive information. Anywhere there is places where you want to add text, just select these bracketed items, and you can now add other text to it. And we check for that to see if there's new information here that's been put in, and then if we reuse the information you type in here. So again, this is an interesting way. So don't think you're editing this value that's in the actual original item that this had. So you're editing this document. So just be aware of that. So you can do both. You can go back to the original element and change the information that's in it, but you also can change other parts of it here, add other things. So if I scroll down, I mentioned that this actually had a states and modes diagram with it, which is nice. So it actually captured that, and then it created this table with the different states as well. Didn't have descriptions, doesn't have values or units associated with it, unfortunately, but that's what's there for the information right now. Capabilities, this is where it's finding some actual actions that are being performed by this, so it's actually putting those in as well. Again, very high level stuff. Here's another example of that external interface. This is the parent one. So it's actually showing you the parent, which is the one we saw before, and those interfaces and how they tie together. And let me keep scrolling down here. Some more capacities and latencies are associated with it as well. Capturing those as part of those requirements. Here's that interface diagram again. We have at the lower level, and its tables being captured and requirements again. So hopefully you can see these, and I'm not going too fast for you. Anyway, so that's just kind of in a nutshell the SRD. Again, this is a brand new capability. These tables are live tables. So if I update the table, I will get that automatically updated here. The data somewhere else, it'll update in here. So again, this becomes a very living document for you to work with, and the baselining helps you then to help you coordinate and manage any kind of review structure. So if you want to do model-based reviews, all somebody has to come in can do is click on this one and come over and do comments. So they can add comments about need to check states. Something like that. And so those are things that, you know, you can post and interact and work together to do the model-based reviews. As I said, now the next thing was that the big enabler for this is the ability to input tables and things as well. So let me do an example of that. I've got another one here. I'm messing up the SRD. So in here, let's see, I think I test plan. Here we go. So here's an example of a test plan, and I've already brought in these diagrams here, and you can go through and create tables as well. So the way to do that, let's say I wanted to get my pass-fail criteria in here. I would just go in and select the table notation, okay, or ending notation. Again, what's the value or table? And so I'm looking for the thing. So this now uses our query. This is just like you're just like the dashboard table. Okay, so you look at your query. Maybe I want number, and I'm going to look for RM star, and then I want attributes. I want the name. Actually, I want the number first, probably. Number, then name, and so other attributes I can look for the action. This is an action thing, so I'm going to be interested in the duration of that action, and you can pick the limit. So you can select the limit to whatever you want. If there's a, and now you get to preview it. So show you what you would see. And then you can adjust your query to be what you want to make that work better for what you're trying to do. And once you're happy with it, you just insert it. And now that table shows up in the view. Again, that may not be exactly the table I want for this. It actually isn't. So I would probably not save this. I can, if I'm still not I'm not happy with it, all I have to do is click the red X and it's gone. Okay, so again, you haven't done anything to the document until that point, until you hit the save. Okay, so clicking out of it or clicking that green check mark would have saved it for me. Again, I can do the exact same thing with notation. So if you notice, and also I can do this with charts. So same place, just come up here, select the chart. I'm going to get an XY plot, and I want to get that comparison, test comparison. Insert that here. There we go. So this is another reason perhaps you may decide that you want to use the charting, is this now lets you embed the charts directly into the tool this way. So again, it makes it live. Again, as you change that chart, it will change here as you want to update. So what we have now is the ability to create completely live documents for you. So that's something that I'm not aware of anybody else being able to do. Usually in model-based systems engineering, people think of that they're going to generate reports. But since we're trying to get to a point where we don't actually have to generate anything into Word or PowerPoint, we wanted to start creating that capability within the tool. So we have that now. So if you want to do a complete model-based reviews, you never want to ever go to Word, Microsoft Office documents, you don't have to. You can do that now all within the tool. So that's a pretty big change, big update. Again, this is a point release, right? And you're getting this kind of major kind of update to it. Let's see, I think I'm still doing okay in time. So let's take a look at the database view and get that roll-up one next. So if you haven't played with this saved queries, it's very helpful for you to see things. And I created a mass roll-up one. And what that did was it was looking at my FS numbers, which are my payload, particularly FS3 on is my payload of my spacecraft, of the whole system, and the bus as well is part of that. So that's looking at that part of the launch vehicle. It's the last stage basically, and so you could see the different decompositions of this with it. And then I selected over here in settings. If you haven't seen how to do this, you would select the attributes, just like we just did in the table view. Same idea, you go select the attributes you want. You could add related columns as well if you need to here to create this table. And then save the query. So again, for those who weren't familiar with this new feature, this came in with 4.0, I believe. So, but what the new thing is that came in that we just did was we said, you know what, we need the ability to do roll-ups. And we had a roll-up report, but that's not good enough. So what we want to do is here's a situation where I've got 3.1 has a lot of stuff under it. So that's the whole payload structure. I want to do a roll-up on that. So I'm going to select roll-up. It asks me what attribute to roll up. Well, mass is the one I care about. And so that's what it did. And it also lets you work the rounding of numbers and as well with your decimal place, so you can look at the exact, do the correct decimal roll, rounding as you're supposed to do in actual work. And you notice here it came up with a value that was 28.26. What that did was it was rolling up at the leaf level, okay, and it found some discrepancies between my projected value, which was 28.1. I don't know if you can still see that or not, but I can. And so it's different. And if I said, really, I want to then apply that, I could just click the blue button here. It would put that value in that spot. But I don't want to do that. In fact, I'm using that as a baseline to tell me, well, wait a minute, that was my budget. Can I live with this or not? Again, this would be where I would start maybe creating some comments or doing some other things, maybe some issues to say, is this something we need to deal with? So again, that's a way to use the roll-up. Again, a simple addition at the moment. We're looking for inputs and thoughts of other things we could roll up, other ways to roll up information. I know a lot of people have thought about reliability and some of these other kinds of things, and those are certainly things we would want to explore and see how we could maybe be able to implement those kinds of calculations for people. Again, just very simple, but we're delving more and more into these kind of analytics as we go. So the next topic area was document template generation. So document template generation is kind of interesting. So the way you start that is you want to create a template. And so a couple of different ways you could import from some other source. That's how we actually started with the SRD. We imported it from that. And so you do that first. You maybe, that's called template A, just for fun. And you pick the type you want. And this is where if you've created your own type, you could have, here's an example of a type we've created for it. So template A. And you do that through the labels in artifacts. If you don't know how to do that, we're glad to show you how to do that. So next thing to do would then be say what you want the template to be. So start with the blank document in this case. So we'll finish that. And let's just go make a quick one here. We'll go ahead and add a executive summary. And let's add after that, we want the scope. Actually, yeah. And let me just do something really quick here. This is going to get annoying. You can always change the where you want to type into. So this lets me tells me where to focus next. So now when I click on this, it will go right into the name field, which is what I wanted. So here's requirements. And then after that, I'm going to do verification requirements. And things like that. Again, maybe I want to split this out, make this functional requirements. And then we'll add after that, the non-functional requirements. So this is just something I'm creating as a template. And so now I want to, this is great. So I have something I can work with. And all I have to do is create it as a template is I select template and I give it a name. And this was that other thing. So SRS template. Let's call that. And then you can, if you've added images or other files, things like that, you can certainly add that information here as well. Let's create that. Okay, and now it's available. And click here to go back to Documents View. So now, there's my template. And so now let's create a new one of that type. And test template. Okay. There we go. And let's do that. So now I have a field called custom template. So I select that and then I select what's available. There's a default template and which is the blank, and then that SRS template. So I would just select that template, hit next, and then finish, and it would create my new document with that template. It's really that simple. So again, it seems like a few steps, but it's well worth the time to create your templates and be able to work with those as you need to. Again, I don't want to get back to, we've got a few other things here. The entity definition report and the support dashboard. So I think I'll skip the organizational administrators. I want to leave a little time, and you can ask about that. What that does is let you reset passwords and authenticate new users. Most of you will not be administrators, so that's not a problem for you, but it is a new feature that's available to the administrators. So let me just jump quickly to the entity definition report. And so now what I want to do is create the entity definition report for anything. And so let's just take a look at actions, and let's take this one because this is an important one for what we're doing, and open the entity view on it. And this is where you can create that report. So here is the report. You just go select entity definition report, and it's an Excel file. Report for DRM. There we go. Enough acronyms for everybody. And then we're going to create that. I'm going to go ahead and put that to my desktop so I can delete it. And that's created that Excel file for me. So now I just open up that Excel file and put it in my other window. So I'll drag it over here so you can see it. So this takes all that information that is in that entity view and then shows it in a nice, simple tabular form. So again, very simple, but with something very basic that was needed and was missing. So it gives us that ability to look at things and work with them more. Okay, so that's kind of in a nutshell the new features. I think it's probably good time for questions.
Thanks, Dr. Dam. We've already received a few questions so far. If you haven't done so, please use the panel on the right to ask your questions. If we have enough time, we will get as many questions answered as we can.
Okay.
Our first question, could you explain a little bit more about why plotting the XY plots in Innoslate is better than using Excel when Excel does such a great job and has many options?
Sure, and in fact, I wouldn't say it's better than Excel. I think that's not the intent of it. The intent of the charts view is to capture the data and be able to work with that data and information together in the rest of the model. And so this lets you do that in a way that now I've got objects I can do things with in addition. Also, it's a precursor for us doing some of those analytics for you automatically, like curve fitting and things like that. So you could then create information for that. Another thing is when we do the simulator upgrade, which is coming soon, actually not too soon, but it is something we're going to be working on in the near future. We're going to be able to have the ability to output all our charts this way as well. So another mechanism for being able to work with that information. So that's the main idea for this. Again, if you have other ideas on the charts, we have other charts planned that we're looking at. So if you got a good idea for a chart that you think would be very valuable to have, that would be great.
Thank you. Our next question is, do you plan to add the capability to plot the results from simulation runs?
Yes, I kind of just said that, but yes, that's exactly part of what we're thinking about with that. And then again, that comparison between the simulation runs and actual test data is what we're trying to get to that point. And again, that ability then to take that chart and put it into a document. So now I've got that all integrated, tightly coupled together instead of loosely coupled.
Thanks, Steve. Our next question is there a way to model instances of an asset in LML? This plotting feature would be much more valuable if we could plot how characteristics of an attribute or risk or action change over time.
Yes, and in fact, that's one of the things we are looking at with this. And in fact, this is an example of, these are characteristics, okay? They're associated with a particular asset. And then I'm showing it time, again, as a characteristic here, is how that's modeled. So that's exactly what we're doing here, I believe. So you can now set that up and create those for different, and this were for different stages of the launch vehicle. And in fact, I believe when we did this, if I click on that item and open up a spider diagram on it, you see the associated items with it. Yeah, so here's my stage 3, and you see all these things that are connected to it. Well, these are your Y values on the plot, and then they're related to get all the relationships here. They're related back to the X position for that. So that's how that's all connected together. So you can kind of see that. I'm sorry, this is such a big chart, but it gives you that idea. So stage 3 came from my launch vehicle. Again, part of my physical model. So actually, I believe we're doing what you're suggesting there.
Thanks, Steve. Our next question is, does the output from requirements documents translate into Microsoft Word to turn into editor?
So yes, I mean, you can certainly save a document as a Word file. That's actually one of the basic reports in the tool. And so yes, so if I wanted to see this one as a Word file, I would come in and just select basic document output, puts it as a docx. And it would then create that. And then now what I can do with that is all the normal word processing things I want to do for what I call making it shelfware. And then once you do have your shelfware, you can go ahead and upload that as an artifact and track it that way within the tool as well. So that's the intent of how to use this. But again, our main goal is to get away from that, to get away from having to go to Office to do these kinds of things, be more interactive.
Thanks, Steve. Our next question is, can the graphs generated automatically pull into the requirements document or other output document?
So automatic is not what we do with it, but we have the ability to insert those anywhere we want. So if I say that chart needs to be part of this executive summary, all I do is go select the chart, whichever one I want. There it is. So yes, save that one. So then that persists and you can work with it that way.
Thanks, Steve. Our next question is, can you import Microsoft Word templates that already contain headers, footers, TOC formats, etc.?
Not yet. That's another thing that we can start looking into now that we have this basic templating capability. But again, our main goal is to get out of that whole document mindset as much as we can. And I will say that it's very easy to add those templates quickly in a Word document output, because we use the style headings and things like that for, let's see if I have that Word document. Don't have it handy, but so you can use those to very quickly update it and make it in the style you want. So again, we're trying to bridge this whole gap between the whole model-based approach and documents-based approach, and trying to give you the best of both worlds as best we can. Again, this is still a work in progress, and it will be for some time. It's we're not where I totally want to be yet, but we're heading down that path pretty rapidly.
Thanks, Steve. Can the new SRD generation function in 4.2 bring in traceability matrices into documents?
I believe so. Let me just see if I got one of those. It's just another diagram. So I just go to the diagram and I would go to my trace. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. No, it's not one. It's not a diagram. That's right. I forgot about that. So actually, no, not at the moment. You would still have to kind of hand jam that in, because you can save it as a PNG and bring it in as a document that way. So it's not live. That is something you could request as a suggestion. It'd be a very good suggestion.
Next question. Does the machine learning requirements tool perform the analysis and locally we would need to have the hardware, or using hardware provided by Spec Innovations via the cloud?
Oh, it's all algorithms built within the, I believe within the JavaScript. It's where we're doing a lot of that analysis. I don't believe we do that on the back end. I believe that's a front end thing. And so those analytics are all built into that. So the machine learning part of it right now is pre-trained machine learning algorithms. The reason for that is otherwise you'd have to start building a large database, and over time it would then learn. So what we've done is we've pre-trained those algorithms from heuristics that people have come up with. So that's where that's coming in. I hope that makes sense. Okay.
Our next question is, can you comment on versioning and baselining?
Sure. So the baselining is built into any document in Documents View. Also, Test Center has something similar. It's called Test Cycles. And the baseline is just right here. So if I want to baseline something, I can make this version 1, and that way anything now I do to this document will be part of the next version. And so I make a change here, you'll see the change in bars, and then I can always go back and see the previous version, but I can't change it. So that's the baseline. So that's been built in for a while now. And of course, you can also use workflow to help you support that whole process as well. But the big thing that we just added for the SRD was the automatic baselining for you. It asks you for that baseline number, and then it'll baseline the document for you and keep it current. So that's the new feature.
Thanks, Steve. That's all the questions that we've received so far. If you think of any other questions after the webinar, please feel free to reach out to us. We would like to thank you again for joining us for today's webinar. As a reminder, we will be following up with you very soon to send you a link to the recording and the presentation slide deck. We'd also like to invite you to our next webinar on September 4th, so be sure to check your email for the invitation. We also encourage you to visit our website and our blog, as well as connect with us on social media. That concludes today's presentation. Thank you again for your attendance, and we hope to see you again at our next webinar in September. Please enjoy the rest of your day.